Second hour today, our weekend edition, and Penedexter, Debbie Georgiadis with us, and we now are joined by Alan West. We encourage you to watch the program or listen to it, of course, online. And, of course, Alan West is the new CEO of the National Center for Policy Analysis. He has served in the military as a lieutenant colonel, certainly, of course, is best known for his involvement in Congress, representing Florida's 22nd district, and, of course, author of the book Guardian of the Republic. And it is always great to have you on the program with us.
It's good to be back in the new year. Last time I was here was the day after Christmas, so Happy New Year to everybody.
Well, glad you could be with us for a short time. And since you can only be with us for a short time, we'll get into some of this. And I have your commentary, 80 minutes of the State of the Union address distilled into 5. My kind of guy.
I try to save you some time.
You do. But one of the things that you bring up early on is the fact that the president focused on minimum wage. And your argument is that no one should have a goal of raising a family on $15,000 a year, but there are some consequences to the economic policies that the president was proposing.
Well, it's absolutely right. When the president stood up there and said, you try to raise your family on $15,000, that's not the purpose of a minimum wage job. The minimum wage job is not supposed to be a career, it's supposed to be an entry-level job, it's supposed to be something for, young teenagers to be able to gain some type of sense of responsibility or what have you. But that's why we have such a high teenage unemployment rate now, because they are forcing adults into an area of employment where they should not be. And the president just does not understand that. So let's say you do, from the federal government level, raise the minimum wage to $10. Well, the person that used to work, get the $10 now, what are you going to do with them? Well, I have to bump you up to $15. Well, the person that used to work at $15, what are you going to do with them? It's a cascading effect. Mm-hmm. And when you look at all the costs, the regulatory costs and all the taxation costs that we're putting on small business owners and franchisees especially, you will not have that dollar meal at McDonald's anymore. Mm-hmm. There won't be a happy meal. It'll be a sad meal. Mm-hmm. And that's the part of economics that the president really doesn't understand. And when I go back and think about how he opened this State of the Union address, and he said the shadow of crisis has passed, it was not a State of the Union. It was a state of denial. Because how can you say the shadow of crisis has passed? 92 million Americans have completely dropped out of the workforce. What are you doing for them? But even worse, you are giving a speech when you have 3 Navy warships off the coast of Yemen preparing to evacuate a U.S. embassy, which a lot of people don't realize, the second U.S. embassy in less than a year has been evacuated. And now we're doing it, 48 hours after his State of the Denial address.
Colonel West, we did cover a lot of the economy, so I'm glad that you're moving us into foreign policy, because it's sad and hard to listen to this president speak this way, especially when there's so much at stake. And one of the places that is at stake, and when you say the shadow is over or the crisis is gone, what about the country of Iraq, where we spent so much time and treasure, and now ISIS is in control there? And, for him to not even mention ISIS,
Al-Qaeda.
And Al-Qaeda.
Well, this is the interesting thing. It was a year ago this week that the president of the United States stood up and said these guys are a JV team.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so look at what has happened a year later. And it was the last State of the Union address where the president got up and beat his chest. We have no more troops in Iraq. Well, guess what? A year later, we have almost 4,000 troops in Iraq. And now they're talking about going and conducting an offensive operation to take back Mosul. Well, that should tell each and every one of us that what you did, owning up to a campaign promise under the guise of national security strategy, was a failure. And that's where we need our side to be able to say your policies, national security policy, economic policy, energy policy, they're failing. All he's doing is getting up there once again, and, it's the game of politics. Free community college, free paid leave, free child care, raise the minimum wage, paid maternity leave, precision medicine initiative. When you're the president of the United States of America and you say climate change is the biggest national security threat that we have, I ain't never seen the weather behead anybody. Okay? Okay.
Debbie, you're on.
I love hearing all that you said, Colonel West. I really, really appreciate all your comments. We were talking earlier, and I just feel it so strongly about President Obama. He just thinks that all of his job in presenting the State of the Union is to dazzle and to inspire and to get young people to say, oh, yeah. And there's no substance, there's no follow-up, there's no responsibility for the facts
because
on the ground.
What you're watching, you're not watching a president in his going into his 7th year. You're watching the 7th season of American Idol from 1600 Pennsylvania. And so you give this state of denial address, and what's the first thing you do afterwards? You go to Boise State University. Then you go to, KU, Kansas University. And I graduated with a master's from Kansas State. That it doesn't fly at K-State. That's why I went to KU.
Difference between Manhattan.
It's a big difference between Manhattan and Lawrence.
Yeah, very much
But that's
so.
the whole point.
That's
The
such a
whole
great line.
point is that it is based upon image. And we have look at the fact that here we have a president that refuses to meet with our best ally in the Middle East in a critical, crucial
All
time.
right, yeah, we'll get to it.
But guess
Yeah.
what? He's sitting down with some female blogger that takes
YouTube.
takes a bath in Fruit Loops. I mean,
Okay.
I mean,
You think he's making this up?
I'm not making it up. I mean, these are the optics that. I mean, if you're the head, if you're Vladimir Putin, what do you see? And see, no one is talking about the fact that we have State Department bureaucrats in Havana, Cuba, talking about diplomatic relations and travel and everything. And guess what's also docked in Havana, Cuba right now? A Russian warship, a Russian spy ship. So that's what Vladimir Putin sees as smart power.
Absolutely he does. The State of the Union and everything I've read about since then, it just is a combination of slogan slinging, feel good, I can solve everything, master of the universe, and just the appeal through raw emotion to, I know I keep going back to it, low information voters, ignorant voters, people who just say, yeah, I want what he says. It reminds me, I remember after President Clinton gave one of his ridiculous everything's a free lunch State of the Union addresses, and people saying afterwards, I just love that guy. It just dazzle with personality, and
But
there isn't
Debbie,
a strong enough voice on our side saying everything you're doing is failing.
You bring up a great point, Debbie, because I would challenge your listeners to go back and Google and look at the State of the Union address that Bill Clinton gave in 1995 after the 1994 midterm losses that he suffered. That was the speech where he said the era of big government is over.
Yeah.
And you saw Al Gore and Newt Gingrich sitting there behind him. And guess what? Welfare reform happened. We had a surplus. We cut the size and scope and growth of the government because he heard the message from the American people. Barack Obama, as he said, I heard the 2/3 of Americans that didn't vote. And so that's what you saw reflecting in his State of the Union address.
I think there's a sense in which, and we addressed this before, is that he's getting up there trying to throw the Republicans into disarray in some way to get them to react or to overreact.
Take the bait.
It would be better just not to take the bait, wouldn't it?
Don't take the bait. Stay focused on your legislative policy agenda.
Exactly. We ran a lot of strong things, and the Republicans should just march through their agenda right now, regardless of what you just said.
Growth, opportunity, and promise.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, we have a lot more to talk about. One of those is Peggy Noonan's commentary here, A Republic of Disrespect. What about this and how we relate to the nation of Israel? And, of course, the commentary by Alan West also speaks to this idea that we're all supposed to play by the same set of rules, unless you're the New England Patriots. But we'll take a break and talk more about that right after this. Weekend Edition, Penna Dexter, Debbie Georgiadis, and Alan West with us for just a little bit longer. And if you'd like to join our conversation, we'll get to some of those phone calls in the next segment. But those of you that are online, just hold on. We'll get to those phone calls. But Penna, we have some questions, and one of those has to do with the nation of Israel.
Well, last week, Kirby, David Cameron of Great Britain came and tried to basically lobby Congress not to threaten sanctions on Iran because of all these nuclear talks that are going on right now. And it's just kind of interesting because during the State of the Union address, John Boehner afterwards made the comment that Obama papered over the threat of Iran big time in that address. And so he's taken it upon himself to invite Netanyahu, who's got a lot to lose there if we have the wrong policies, to come and address a joint session of Congress. Of course, that has caused the White House just conniption fits. And so I want to ask Colonel West about the wisdom of doing that and whether that's a good idea and actually warranted in the times that we're in.
Well, I think it's very warranted because the president did gloss over what is happening with Iran. As a matter of fact, Washington Post just yesterday gave the president 3 more Pinocchios about him saying that Iran's nuclear program has slowed down. those 10,000 centrifuges are still spinning, and they're still enriching uranium. Furthermore, Israel just produced pictures showing these new intercontinental ballistic missiles that can not just, of course, hit Israel, but can go into Europe and maybe even strike us here. And when you understand the electromagnetic pulse threat, that's a big to-do as far as our power grid. Now, I find it very interesting that people are in the Obama administration are upset about John Boehner taking a unilateral action when no one says anything, when we wake up and there are 5 guys from Gitmo that are now in Uruguay. Oh, there are 4 guys from Gitmo that are now back in Oman, and they're Yemenis. And guess what? Oman borders Yemen, so I think they can just easily walk across the border that no one recognizes. So the Obama administration can't have their cake and eat it too. There are plenty of unconstitutional unilateral actions that this president has been doing. To mention, the executive action on immigration. The fact that the president says he will not meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, that's a testimony to the level of immaturity that we see, because he should say, something, at this critical point in time, when Iran is now in control of the capital of Yemen, Sana'a, through the Al-Houthis. They're in control pretty much of the capital of Lebanon because of Hezbollah. They're in control of the capital of Syria, Damascus, because of their support to Bashar al-Assad. They're in control of Baghdad because they are basically running the government there. And as a matter of fact, we've outsourced taking care of ISIS to Iran because the president doesn't want to deal with it. The Saudis are very concerned because they see themselves being encircled. And this president is sitting around talking about we need to have more negotiations and time. So shame on the president for acting so immature that he will not meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and shame on anyone that criticized the Speaker of the House for inviting Prime Minister Netanyahu, who I was fortunate to be able to see speak in that chamber. Mm-hmm. We need a leader.
Yeah.
And we don't have it in the one that is sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania.
There's an article also this week, and I love that we have Allen West here to talk about these things, both because he has military experience and because he's been served in the U.S. House. But there's a pretty striking and alarming article out by Charles Krauthammer. I think it might be up on the Point of View website, called The Emerging Iranian Empire. And you more or less alluded to that. But, I've spoken in the past with Claire Lopez for Center for Security Policy, who talks about Americans tend to see the whole Middle East as kind of a bunch of countries, and it's hard to keep them straight. But Iran is the largest one of concern to America's stability and to the stability of the Middle East. I want to have you comment on that.
Yeah, Iran, without a doubt. There is a move afoot in the Muslim Islamic world as to who's going to be the next dominant hegemon. The historical hegemon right now is Saudi Arabia because of the holy cities Mecca and Medina. Turkey under Erdogan wants to restore themselves because the last hegemonic dominance was the Ottoman Empire, and so he's trying to push that. Saudi Arabia, Qatar is also in there, and Turkey are all Sunni. And so they're pretty happy, we get to pass it on from whomever. But Iran is Shia, and this is something that really does scare the rest of these Sunni countries because of that religious schism that is there. And they see United States of America that is really aligning themselves with Iran by saying we're going to have more talks, we need to be more patient. If you try to do something as far as sanctions, I'm going to veto it. You even have Democrats like Bob Menendez, the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who's fuming about this on top of fuming about, what is going on with Cuba. So we are playing with a big match. And also, I believe Iran and Russia have just signed an agreement this week, too.
I would be remiss if I did not ask a lieutenant colonel what he thought about the movie American Sniper. I think everybody around the table has seen it, so I'd love to get your comments. And ladies, I want to have you join in as well.
Well, first of all, I think it is unconscionable. It's despicable that you have some people on the left that are attacking Chris Kyle, attacking this movie. I think the most recent was the Rolling Stone, who put Dzhokhar or Tsarnaev on their cover. That was a very realistic film, and I think that people get to understand what it means to fight what we call the urban 25-meter war, where you don't know what's around the corner. And when you're in that environment where the enemy does not wear a uniform, these non-state, non-uniform, unlawful enemy combatants, and the split-second decisions that you have to make, you see the guy on the cell phone, you know what he's doing. and you're tracking him. Then the next thing you know, you see the woman coming out. And the little things that you pick up, remember he said she's not swaying her arm, she's holding something. You know, you become really attuned to those things. And then the grenade is given to the kid. So what do you have to do? I mean, you got this column of Marines that you're supposed to be in the overwatch position to protect. But the line that a lot of people maybe did not pay attention to, remember when his spotter said, man, if you're wrong about this, they'll fry you. And you'll be in Leavenworth. See, that's what I hate, is that we have people that don't understand that environment. Second Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, a Texan, is serving 20 years in Fort Leavenworth Prison for killing the enemy because of the tactics they were using.
I think something else that comes up and is brought to the surface with this movie is, you know, you're watching a lot of these battle scenes, you're seeing the sacrifices, the ultimate sacrifice that Chris Kyle paid, but, you know, a lot of his buddies, the injuries and things. And then we saw President Obama promise in his campaign and then fulfill that promise. One of the ones he actually filled to pull out. And then, you know, that opened it up then for ISIS to come back in and cause extreme devastation. Now we've got to go back and do it all over again. And the left does not want that reality put on the big screen, especially a movie, because I don't think they cared so much until they saw how well it did. It's done so well, and it's going to do even better because of word of mouth now. I mean, I saw it on the first day that it came out, and I've told everyone to see it, even people that don't like war movies.
It is amazing, like you said, that a year ago the president was touting that we have withdrawn out of Iraq. That movie comes out, and now we're talking about going back in and retaking territory that we already had. It's a slap in the face to those men and women who served and sacrificed, lost limbs, lost their buddies, lost their lives. But also, it's a slap in the face to the families that stayed back here and watched their loved ones go and fight, like he said, against evil. Fight to try to offer something to other people. We can argue about, you know, nation building and whatever. But the bottom line is that, you know, myself, men and women went to do what this nation asked them to do.
I love the movie, too. I was going to say, for our female listeners, I know that I have many friends who say, I don't see war movies. And ladies, it is not a war movie. It is a brilliant, brilliant movie, really, in honoring America. I was going to make 4 quick points about it.
Well, there's a whole love story in it, too. So
there's a love story. There's also just as Alan was alluding to, the families at home. It showed a beautiful, genuine depiction of what it's like to be raising kids, and your dad's gone a lot, and when he comes back, it's very hard to reintegrate with a family. I also wanted to say, I just was struck in one scene when they finally, it's toward the end of the movie, but they're trying to pull out of one of the cities that they're in. The American troops they're jumping out of a truck, and there's a large contingent of Iraqis chasing them and yelling and waving arms at them. What I was thinking was the tremendous restraint it would take to not just, you have your weapons, you got your machine guns, there's a bunch of, they're going to come after you again someday. The restraint shown by those troops to just pull out and not instead fire on this crowd. I mean, I understand it wouldn't have been permissible, but it just, you're being taunted and mocked and threatened and
it's a discipline.
Screamed. It's an astounding restraint. And last one was, America wants a hero, and that's why people love that movie.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I think that we got that depiction of what this modern day battlefield really is. I mean, just the same as when you had Lone Survivor. And at the end of Lone Survivor, just the same as the end of American Sniper, people just sat there silent because it just was that impactful.
Alan West has been with us. He is with the National Center for Policy Analysis. We have a link to NCPA. As a matter of fact, you've got Mike Huckabee coming into town.
Absolutely. Mike Huckabee will be in. We're co-sponsoring him with the Rotary Club of Dallas on February the 4th. So please go to www.ncpa.org and get your reservation.